Welcome to another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance. This is a live show, and if you have any questions, put them into the comment section. We'll hopefully get to them. If we don't, we'll ask them or answer them after. I also kind of want to get a little house cleaning up. It is Mental Wellness Month, so we wanted to make sure that people understand that you don't have to take this journey alone, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that today and the support that Anthea gets. But we are also hosting our third mental wellness entrepreneur seminar webinar. I guess not even webinar, but it's live here in Calgary in partnership with Collectively Tangled and the Hunter Hub. Again, it's a chance to come meet like-minded people, ask questions, learn things, and it is, again, a very important aspect of our community, is making sure that that it's okay not to be okay. So that being said, let's get into today's discussion. Anthea, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
It's a beautiful day. It's I don't even know. I'm just excited. I'm listening. The birds are chirping. It's just a great Wednesday.
It's wonderful as we roll into summer in Alberta.
I know it's going to be plus 29. Both girls have softball games today, so we got to go one way, other way. Hopefully, be able to catch a little bit of both of them. And
nice.
Yeah, again, I've watered my lawn already this morning, so it's like okay. It's like it's a great Wednesday.
Absolutely.
I know. Well, again, the funny thing is I know you came on short notice here, and I really appreciate that as somebody had a death in the family, and all the best to them, and we'll get them on in a future date. But as I said, we should have talked probably 2 years ago when we kind of first met through the startup TNT, and you were raising and things like that. But I always love listening to the inspirational stories, the why, the how, the aha moment that you had to found this company, 2S Water. So please share your story.
Sure. And my co-founder and I worked together for it's been like 15 years now. It's been a long time. But we always worked in the oil and gas industry. And my co-founder is my father, as many people know. I felt a great deal of honor and a great deal of respect working for the family business, which is where I originally worked. It was my grandfather's business. I worked with my grandfather for many years. If you think the 2-generation split is fun, try the 3-generation split. That's extra fun. But I didn't feel good about the environmental legacy that I was leaving. So when this opportunity came, we saw another recession coming. I went to my co-founder and said, let's start a business. And my one requirement was that we have an environmental directive. And his one requirement was that we have monthly recurring revenue, because it takes 2 types to start a business. So we really went looking for a problem. We were aware of this problem, metal detection in water from the oil and gas industry. It's a huge problem around SAGD boilers, around effluent release and fracking water. It was also huge in the news around Flint, Michigan, and municipal water at the time. We originally thought we were going to be in municipal water. We called up all the local municipalities. We went on tours of their water treatment facilities, understood our first grasp of the customer that way. And then came to understand that, in fact, mining had a much larger problem around metal detection in water than municipalities could, because where was the problem coming from? It was coming from heavy industry down to the municipalities. So we went to the core of the problem, and we really found a great community there.
Well, that's interesting how, I mean, I'm sure we could probably talk forever about being in a family business, especially 3-generational. Actually, my longest Telling It Like It Is was with Dan, and he's a psychologist that works in, helps people in family businesses, and that's his specialty. He also has a family business. So he not only practices what he speaks as a psychologist, but I just want to kind of touch on that before we get into the differences on why you went to the industry side of things. But how was it, having, grandpa, your dad, was there, let's talk a little bit separating the dinner table from the boardroom table, so to say.
I'm sure my father would have lots to say on that too, because during COVID, we moved across the street from him. So now he can't even avoid me. If I don't get him at work, I can just walk over. I wouldn't have it any other way. I very much like working with my father. We work very well together. My CTO is actually my brother. So, and we're very lucky on that. He's the best programmer I've ever met in my life.
Nice.
And he's really been just amazing during the project. Working with my grandfather was harder. I think the speed of change in our society, it's easy to forget for us who are standing on the front lines. But for my grandfather, who, he founded that company in 1966, he was working there until he was 97, 98. He just passed away during COVID, not from COVID, but from ripe old age. And he grew up in an entirely different world. And so it
Yeah.
was always a bit of a clashing mentalities on how things should be done. Um, but because it was in a family basis, I think there was such respect and love that we were allowed to face that clash in a way that would have been very, very difficult otherwise.
No, I bet, and I'm glad. Obviously, I've sat there and talked to companies that, let's say, haven't had a positive family experience,
Yes,
so to
many
say,
people are
right?
completely shocked. I tell people I work with my father, and 90% of the time the reaction is, "Oh, I could never do that."
I
But
just think of my own daughter saying, "Okay, let's go into business." I can probably imagine how that would go over.
well, the irony is, it was actually an impediment when we were raising. We get classed in with husband-wife teams, and husband-wife teams, whether it's true or not, have a reputation among investors for getting divorced and then, tearing the company apart. Whereas our approach was, there's no divorcing your father. It does not work that way.
No.
Um, we kind of look at it as the family business is the most traditional business structure that exists. Historically, businesses were family businesses. So it's, for us, it's a very strong dynamic, and it's worked very well. I think now, having said that, as we grow, it's important to bring more voices onto the board who have different experience. That's probably our biggest weakness being a family business, is that Tony and I have worked together for so long. We come from the same house. Like, we think in similar ways in all
Yeah.
likelihood. So bringing in new voices is going to be an important part of our growth, certainly.
No, that's awesome. I mean, I love that, right? And, realizing that having someone come in from the outside is also very important.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And we are lucky in that here in Alberta and in Canada, we have such a strong support network. We have really good advisors. We have a lot of other people, who while we're still so small that we can't have them on the management team, they're there, they're helping us make decisions. They're bringing that insight and that wisdom in. So we're always very grateful for that as well.
No, that's awesome. And thanks for sharing those insights. I mean, some people, that might be watching now or after the fact here is like, God, I mean, I might be that husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, partners, whatever it may be, that are thinking about going into business. So it's always good to share, some of the positives. And we could probably talk about that, but we're here to talk about 2S Water and what you guys have done with your business. Not
I
not
will
not
I will just say, just before we go off that topic, that my first business I started with my now husband. So I did manage to keep that one together as well.
Well, there we go. Well, I'm sure
Sure.
that's probably in the investor deck, I'm guessing.
No, we don't put that one in the investor deck. There's enough in there already about family.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, so like you mentioned earlier, and you said that you thought that it would be the new municipality, the
Mhm,
water that you would be going in and having it, and then all of a sudden you kind of said, no, it is industry because it's a bigger problem.
mhm.
So was it just because the cities of Calgary, Edmonton, or wherever you were doors you were banging on at that time? Were they just saying, no, we look at after ourselves, and then you realized that the industry really needed help, or was it just because that door was closed?
No, I think there was a lot of interest on the municipal side. They and certainly municipalities are great about piloting new technology. They were fantastic partners for early stage when it didn't come to requesting capital. So
Hmm.
certainly that's something that, if you have a technology that can be sold to municipalities, they're a great test bed. The sales cycle is really, really long, and very conservative, which is what
Yeah.
you want in your municipality, but not in your first customer. Um, so, and we kind of identified the industry angle because they started reaching out to us, especially around lithium brine extraction. That was really where the mining industry first started coming up to us and saying, "Hey, can you guys do this?" And once we started to find that, we really found that product market fit. And when you find it you can tell. Like, there's that moment, when we were talking to municipalities, they were always interested. They always wanted to talk about it. We started talking to mining companies. I started hearing over and over in the first conversation, like, "Are you guys piloting? Can we pilot with you? And that was something we didn't hear that quickly or that enthusiastically in the municipality industry.
I mean, maybe it's because they think that their water treatment plants are perfect. I don't know. Is that, do you
Well,
think that was it, or?
there is a value proposition mismatch, which isn't that they think their water treatment is perfect. Part of our value proposition in the mining industry is that we'll help you reduce the chemicals that you use on your water treatment by providing you actual data of what's happening in the water. The current methodology is, if I expect a spike of zinc to come through, I have to treat to what I expect the top of that spike will be all the time because I might not see it.
Okay.
For a mining company, they're going to say, we can adjust our treatment, we can be fluid if we have the data. For a municipality, their response was, if we get it wrong, people get sick. You can give me the data all day long and it's great and it will make me feel more comfortable, but I will not change my treatment because I must be sure. So we didn't have the ROI there that we had in the mining industry.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that makes,
yes.
yeah. Nobody want. I mean, obviously, Flint, Michigan is probably. I mean, never mind some of our northern communities in our own country, but
Yeah.
I mean, to happen in a big city like, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they still have safe water there.
Well, there's a strong debate about that.
Yeah.
The municipality says they do.
Yeah.
The community says they don't. So I don't know who is correct. We haven't gone there and tested the water, but one thing is absolutely certain is that the trust in the municipality's ability to treat the water is completely broken, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I mean, it's probably more of a loss of trust. I'm guessing at this point, right? On that
It's a
one.
huge aspect of it, yeah. And I mean, part of the problem with lead as well is that it occurs in between the water treatment facility and the pipe very often. So even here in Edmonton and Calgary, the legal requirements for lead testing are actually at the tap. So occasionally your municipality is going to run around and ask you for a water sample, and that's because they're testing the end of the line process.
Oh, well, there we go.
Now, I mean, it's still very valuable to know what's coming out of the water treatment facility, especially, in more industrial applications. That's of high concern. But I will say municipalities are very much on lead these days, in my opinion, based on what I'm seeing.
Well, you would know, you're living it. So so let's talk about the mining industry. So when you're going into there and you're talking to, client XYZ and you're pitching them on their water, what are you talking to them about, and what are you testing for in the water?
So we have 31 different metals that we have validated for, another 47 in development. The majority of the metals that we're actively testing for in the field are things like copper, nickel, zinc, cadmium, things that you don't want in your water in high levels because they're incredibly damaging to the ecosystems which occur around them. And then, of course, we have our high value extractives like lithium, gold, silver that we also test in more in-process streams as well. So.
And how do you do that? How do you actually test this? Like, what's I want you to share the process, I guess, without actually giving anything away.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
We've patented it all, so you
Perfect.
can
Well, then we're
go
good.
see the patents. We use plasma-based spectroscopy. I'm
Woo.
gonna go out on a limb and say that probably means nothing to you.
I understand what plasma is. I have a
Okay.
TV, right?
Hey, there you go. Different plasma, but yes. So my total layman's explanation is we light the water on fire and look at what glows in order to see what metals are in there.
Ooh. This is probably one of the few times I wish I actually had a video of that I could actually share while we're actually talking.
Yeah, it looks like a little candle flame, and the fun bit is if you run different metals through it, it changes color. So lithium glows a beautiful purple. Copper is a lovely orange color. So it's visible to the naked eye often, although
Yeah.
not in the concentrations that we're detecting it in. Then we need special technology in order to look at the wavelengths of that light. And kind of a more technical explanation is, we're exciting the metal molecules until their electrons jump valence. And then as they exit the plasma, their electrons drop down a valence, emit light, and that light is at a very specific nanometer frequency. And using the intensity of that light, we can calculate how much in the metal there is.
So I'm guessing this works for all industry. I mean, I know there's mining, and I'm guessing that's big, here, obviously in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
What other industries are you working in, and what other, countries or continents are you working in, or is that a plan down the line?
So right now we're trying our best to limit it to North America, which is difficult because mining is an international industry. We're deploying in Canada and the United States right now. We expect to be going to Mexico and South America sooner than we want to. I think that just the nature of the industry, we're going to get drawn to additional markets, which is always a risk that needs to be managed going forward. But with strong partnership from the mining industry, which we are seeing, I think we'll be okay on there. Mining is our primary target right now because when you find product market fit, well, you go there. Semiconductor, I think, will be our second set of applications. They have some really difficult water requirements to make semiconductors. And with that industry returning to North America, where we have more stringent environmental considerations than potentially in Southeast Asia. And although they actually have some quite strong requirements as well, we're going to see more of that industry coming to the fore. Oil and gas is another one where they have huge issues around their water. And of course, we will get to municipal one day when we have structure under us and partners who work in that industry.
Oh, yeah, right. Again, you go your product market fit, you find it, you sell it, you go to it, you live it, and then you got your,
Yeah.
I was talking about this yesterday with somebody, and then down the road you can start those talks, but they're going to take anytime that you're putting politics in there and things along those lines, it just complicates the hell out of it.
Well, and we're talking about large enterprise sales, so there's even for one mining customer, there's 3 or 4 value propositions that we need to understand. There's many stakeholders we need to get on board on that sale. Splitting ourselves amongst multiple industries means that we need to have a lot more market depth than we could potentially sustain with our small team. So focus is so hyper important at this stage for a company like ours.
So is it and when it comes to, I want to talk a little bit about the process, because I know a lot of companies that we see, especially through TNT and companies we've invested in, are always, banging on these guys, always banging on the big guys. And I don't want you to give any trade secrets. And I guess before I ask this question, I just want to say if anybody wants any more information about 2S Water, just go to their website. It's on there, 2swater.com. You'll be able to find out more about them and get any additional information.
And if you go to the website and send an email to the chat, I will get it. So please feel free to send me questions.
The co-founder and the chatbot. I like that. I think you should have that. Change your LinkedIn profile right now.
Co-founder and chatbot for sure.
Co-founder chatbot. Oh my goodness, that's funny.
Small teams.
Hey, you got to be nimble, right? You got to do whatever it takes.
CTO and janitor, so we all wear a few hats right now.
We always talk about that. That is awesome. So when you're, do you have any, I guess, tips when you're going to go for, maybe someone that's, just starting out or thinking about starting up, about going into, banging on the big door, the big guys' doors and saying, how do we get in? Everyone's like, oh my God, you got to start at top. Well, no, you got to start here. You got to go there. Like what, share some of your secrets.
I do have tips because I've thought about this extensively because it wasn't easy. And I think there's really a twofold way. And like when I'm speaking, I'm really speaking to these big enterprise companies. So whether it's like oil and gas or mining or anywhere where you're going to have 3 or 4 major people that you have to sell to, there's a real challenge because you need to know the problem walking in the door or they're not going to talk to you. You also need buy-in from the bottom and you need buy-in from the top. So our methodology around this was kind of twofold. To get that low-level information, we started going to a lot of, there's a Canadian Institute of Mining. They have a lot of meetings. During COVID, they went virtual. We took a lot of time there to connect to operators and people on the line. So the very kind of bottom rung of who would be our potential buyers were where we started, because they love to talk about what they're doing. They don't get a lot of outreach. They're not being bothered by startups 24/7 or other vendors. That all goes through corporate. They are willing to get on a call. They're happy to talk about their work environment. You can do all your customer discoveries right there and get a real grasp of what the problem is. Then when you go to those higher up levels, you actually have the ammunition that you need in order to say, like, look, here's your problem. You can be, this is your problem at this facility. And I know because I talked to this guy and suddenly that's a way better value proposition than coming in being like, I have a technology and I think I can help you. The other thing that we did, because we found that was a great way to get our base knowledge. But now the next challenge is I need an an innovator or an early adopter sitting in that high level seat. Or the second question out of their mouth is going to be, who else have you done this with? And please provide me the data from that, which we ran into a lot. And knowing the value proposition, that got us that first phone call, but now where are we? So we tried a bit of like shotgun approach. I did a ton of cold calling, and it was effective. Nobody cold calls anymore. So if you want a way to get through to people, it's remarkably effective. But it wouldn't get me to my innovators and early adopters. It was needle in a haystack. So we started looking for very industry-specific innovation events. So I tried to present at every possible mining innovation event. I applied for all of them, and there are a handful, probably in every industry. I can't necessarily help you find your industry-specific ones, but they are out there, especially for these large industrial groups. And then the innovators could self-select. So that room of people, when we would go to these online pitches or to these physical pitches that were focused on innovation in the mining industry, suddenly now I had a list of people who were innovators and early adopters. And that's where we started getting our early traction. Was we knew the value proposition because we talked to the frontline guys, and then we focused in on those innovators and early adopters, and suddenly people were willing to pilot.
I would love to stop this interview right now, because I can't tell you what a great answer that was. And
thank you.
it just puts a big smile on my face as a guy who's been a 30-year sales guy. I mean, I consider myself a salespreneur more than anything. And I understand the value of having that knowledge, and some people don't. And that makes a difference between somebody going, as you said it, like, I am going to use that, and I'm going to cut and paste it, and I'm going to ask for your permission right now. I'm going to post that on LinkedIn. Perfect. Because when you just go in there, as what you said, going in and saying, I've got a problem for you, I can solve it, they're like, yeah, you and everybody else.
Right.
It's getting into the trenches. It's understanding the problem. It's talking to the people that, as you said, never get talked to, that are more than willing to share, because it's going to make if it makes their lives easier, if it makes their company better, because most of them probably have some sort of environmental feedback or some sort that they don't want to. As you said, that your grandpa had, bottom line, you had something that you wanted to feel better about the environment. That's everywhere. And that is just such a great answer. And thank you for sharing that.
Well, I think it's a huge challenge. And it's one I hear so often in the early stages. It's like, how do I understand the problem? And the answer is like, you got to get uncomfortable and get on phone calls with people you don't know and go in there being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Tell me all about your job. And you know what? They love it. People love to talk about themselves. It's
shocking.
Yeah. And like that took time to learn, but I think like that was one of the ways that we really opened the door, and one of the easy things that I think it's like a nice information chunk that we can pass on to help other people up and coming, hopefully.
And I mean, and that's what telling it like it is all about, right? I mean, again, it's about sharing a story, amplifying your story, and all the great things that are going on here. But it's also sharing those ups and downs, that if somebody out there is struggling and can see this and understand it, and like, you know what, I should probably start down here and figure shit out before I go up here, and really understand that, because sometimes you get one shot if you get that meeting.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to get into that C-suite and you get to the right guy and you find that champion, and that's going to say, okay, I'll get you to the right person now, I feel comfortable recommending you. You better understand the solution.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think back to the early days, we had lots of meetings like that we threw because we didn't know it. But some of those meetings we did get back again, I will say. But it took us a couple years. And then we had to really learn that value proposition. I had to come with it, locked and loaded. Otherwise, we weren't getting back in.
Yes, well, exactly. Well, I want to touch a little bit more. I mean, you talked about, expanding where you want to go, things along those lines, and future, the 47 extra tests that you're going to be able to run. So why don't we kind of put this as a two-part question of what's next? Let's go maybe short term, and the next, and it could talk about, raising funds, things like that, or company for the next 1 year and maybe the next 5 years.
So certainly the next 6 months for us are about validation. Now we've got the product. We spent the last year in the field doing that whole back and forth, figure out what goes wrong, go fix it, get things running again, learn that, because the lab is not the same as the field. And that is, again, why you need that real classic innovator on the other side of the table, because they have patience for that kind of thing. So now we've got a product we're really comfortable with. It works. It's great. Now it's getting it out into the field and validating with enough customers that we have those case studies, that those kind of early majority we can use to convert into our sales pipeline. Thereafter, it's expansion as fast as we can. And we're probably going to be looking at doing our next raise in 12 to 18 months, I think. And I will say we're able to push it out that far because of the generous grant funding available in Canada. It is our competitive advantage against the United States. And I think anyone who's not taking advantage of that, be sure that you're taking advantage of the grant structure, because that's the way we play with the big dogs in the US. And then we will look at doing probably a large VC raise for our next round. We were incredibly lucky in that in our last round, which was in March 2022, we did half of the round with angels out of Ontario. We found great product market fit there because they understood the mining industry. That's my other piece of advice. When you're looking for angel investors, look at people who are in the industry you're serving. They get the value proposition very quickly. But we also had a US VC come in on that angel term sheet to support us, which was wonderful. That was a very early move. They were a very water focused VC, so they also understood the value proposition. Yeah. So I think we're heavy on that US VC path now, and that will likely be where we go in the future.
Oh, and that's great. I mean, it's and that's just kind of the reality of it. I mean, anytime. I mean, as we grow as an industry, as an angel, as a VC, as a seed round, we'll eventually get to being able to cut those bigger checks, and that just takes time, and that's okay. But that point that you brought up is, I mean, I talk on a lot of shows around North America, and everybody is envious of, especially Alberta, of what we have, of Alberta Innovates, of IRAP, of all the other things that come along with it, and the support that we get here. And I'm going to say I had we'll call it a healthy discussion with somebody at Inventures that says, nobody's here supporting, no one gets me, no one does anything, no one does it. And I was just saying, well, then see ya. Like, if that's your attitude and you don't want to work here and you don't want to be here, then leave.
If you can't see how good the support network is. Yeah. So, and having, I'm doing a fair bit of travel in the United States. A lot of that's been, well-supported introductions into other ecosystems from the Canadian government. The New York ecosystem, we're very tightly connected with. Silicon Valley. These huge cities, they don't have the ecosystem that we have here.
No.
They're trying, and then many of the other cities have nothing. And I think we underestimate. The other thing that makes me appreciate it is having a co-founder who was doing startups in the 80s and 70s. Because I go into his office and I complain, there's no ecosystem, and he goes, let me tell you about how much ecosystem there was here in the 70s. There was nothing at all. So I think, we forget as well how much of this is growing around us right now in a way that that wasn't there a few years ago. Excuse my cat, home office.
Nope. I agree, right? And in the 70s, you're walking, uphill in a snowstorm, and all the things that I heard from my dad and grandpa too.
Right. And I think, especially for us women playing in this industry, it was not an option 50 years ago. It was not. No. And we have to remember that. Like, it is still a struggle. Absolutely. For women and people of color, it is a different game we're playing. But it's so important to remember that we wouldn't even be playing this game 50 years ago. And, I didn't want to be on like the front lines of gender equality, but apparently this is where it's at. So,
well, it is. I mean, it's one of the stats at TNT I love is that 40% of the companies we've invested in have been women founded or co-founded.
Yeah.
And I just when I was at the Women's Entrepreneurial Day here at the Hunter Hub, I listened to Ghada speak, and she got an investment through TNT as well. And she's like, she said, as a woman in energy, as a minority, and she's saying all these red flags, not all these things that hamper her. She's like, you just go through it and you prove everybody wrong. And she's a 3-time founder. She's probably one of the most inspiring, female entrepreneurs that I've met, and there's a ton of them out there. It's just
the
great.
stats in Alberta. I mean, we've got 50% more women founders than the rest of the country.
I know,
and we're still only at 30%.
I know. So numbers can always be better, right? But again, it's when you talk about our ecosystem here. If you think it's going to be better somewhere else, please go find out. And I think you will find out very, very quickly. How supportive this ecosystem is, and I mean, works
and what that means for a company. Like, I think it's easy for us to forget, but I cannot think the number of times that opportunities have come across my desk because my network of friends, associates, and other startup founders were looking out for me. Mm-hmm. That, and a lot of real actual friends, people who I've had to my house, who've met my children, who I met through the startup community. I have never had another job where I met true and genuine friends. And for that, I am deeply grateful.
It's just wonderful to hear that, right? I mean, and I hear a lot of those stories because I'm out there a lot, and it's something that, again, puts a really big smile on my face and makes me proud to be, an Albertan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm always sad when these conversations are coming to an end, and we probably could talk longer, but you've given us many, many pieces of advice here that I'll probably be able to chop up. But I'm going to ask for, one more piece of advice for if you had for an entrepreneur or a startup, Anthea, what would that be?
I heard a really good one. I mean, obviously, tenacity, holding on. Maybe what I will actually speak to is what you started this out with. This is a difficult journey. It is taxing. It is taxing not just on you as an individual. It is taxing on the mental health. Entrepreneurs have incredibly high levels of depression. They have high levels of drug abuse and alcohol abuse. Take care of yourself. It is okay. It is okay to grind a little less. It is okay to make sure that you're okay. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you drive yourself into the ground, there's nothing left. So take care of you. Go to the mental health thing that Jade said at the beginning, and be kind to yourselves.
Yeah, asking for help is not a sign of weakness, and
right.
I mean, that's something that we use in our tagline at Peer Guidance. We use, we talk about people all the time, and I said, when I put myself out there, I sit down with random people. Probably, once every 4 or 5 weeks, someone will reach out and say, "Hey, I don't know you. Can I meet you for coffee?"
Right.
And again, I understand that I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a social worker. I can't help them. But what I can do is listen and then guide them in the right way to who they need to talk to and who they should be helping. But sometimes they just need that one person to listen. And if somebody reaches out, and whoever is listening right now, just say yes, and don't one-up them. Don't tell them about your problems. Just listen to them. Be there for them, buy them a coffee, and then just say, here's a few numbers that you can call. And I mean, that's what some people just need, right? Is somebody just to sit there across the table from them and listen.
We just want to know we're not alone out there. And you know what? We are not alone out there.
We are not. And again, Anthea, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, what a great conversation. And
thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
I love what you guys are doing, and I'm a big fan. And happy travels. And I know you just got back from Boston and you're off to New York. And I mean, you're going to be out there and having fun. And I'm going to be here in Calgary. I'm going to be thinking about you going to Cat's Deli.
I'll have an extra good food in New York. Just thinking of you, Jade.
Yeah, well, I want to say, if you do go to Nathan's Famous Hot Dogs, please send me a photo because I always crave them.
I will do so. I will torture you with a photo of Nathan's if I make it there.
Oh, awesome. And again, please, if you have any information, you want to find out more, 2swater.com. It's in the comment section about our mental wellness event with the Hunter Hub and Collectively Tangled. Please check it out. It's in the comment section as well. And Anthea, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a